Hello everyone, this is our 5-day canoe trip on the Powell Forest Canoe Circuit. The Powell Forest Canoe Route is one of the most beautiful journeys on the Sunshine Coast. With 57 kilometers, 8 lakes, and 5 portages, you'll find lots of amazing views, spectacular lakes and mountains, wildlife, and recreational activities. Now, Lois Lake is the main campsite with a large parking area. It has separate day use and overnight sites. We launched our canoe at the south end of Lois Lake, and we paddled northeast for about 8 kilometers. There were hundreds of submerged stumps and dead trees in the lake. It was like a freaking maze. We saw a large eagle's nest but couldn't see any eagles. Finally made it through to our first portage. Now, after finishing up at Lois Lake, we had a 1.5 kilometer portage to Horseshoe Lake. This was our first campsite of the trip. There was a site along the way by the river, but we pushed on and spent the night right on the water at Horseshoe Lake. We got up in the morning on day 2 to beautiful sunshine, had some breakfast, and headed out on our paddle across Horseshoe Lake. When you get to the north end of Horseshoe Lake, you can take either the east or the west routes. Both end up at Dodd Lake, they just go through different small lakes. We went east, but the portage was brutal. It was about 1.5 km, but mostly uphill. Like, rough uphill. This is Little Horseshoe Lake. We went this way because the fishing was supposed to be better. I only caught one rainbow trout. He swallowed the hook, so we had him for supper. Our campsite was private and nice. We had a swim, a fire, and just relaxed the rest of the day. And we set up our campsite right on the water at Little Horseshoe Lake. We even had a nice picnic table. That's my mom, and I'm about to throw a rope up to hang our food away from the bears. In the morning, we started out with a portage to Beaver Lake, then on to Dodd. There's the Beaver Dam on Beaver Lake. The main main site on the southwest end of Dodd Lake can be accessed by vehicles. The other two campsites in the northeast end are only accessible by water. The old landing at Dodd Lake was used to supply logging camps in the area. We went right through Dodd though and on to Windsor Lake with a half-kilometer portage. We paddled through Windsor Lake to the campsite on the north end. Windsor is the highest elevation of all the lakes. The portage down to Goat Lake from Windsor is about 2.5 kilometers and a very steep downhill. It was hard on the knees with the canoe on my shoulders. We decided to hike the portage that night and camp at Goat Lake. We would come back the next morning to pick up the canoe. It worked out well because it rained that night and we had to spend 2 nights at Goat Lake trying to wait out the weather. After spending 2 nights on Goat Lake, we decided to try and paddle all of Powell in one day. It was a 30-kilometer trek, so we got up early and left by 7 a.m. The weather was nice for about an hour, and then it started to pour with rain. We had to stop at Fiddlehead Landing to try and dry off. It's a small cabin just off about a third of the way through Powell Lake. We made some lunch there, waited for the weather to stop. We finally got a chance after about an hour of sitting around, and we hit the water. Now, Powell Lake should only be paddled in the early morning or late afternoon. We had to stop around 3 o'clock because the wind was getting too tough to fight. We stopped at the Inland Lake campground, but I wouldn't recommend staying there unless it's been really dry for a while because it was quite a muddy campsite. There is one more campsite near the west end of Powell Lake, but it is a regional district campsite and you'll have to pay. If you're considering doing this trip, we rented our canoe from Mitchell's Canoe and Kayak Rental, and our transport who picked us up and dropped us off was Sasquatch Trails. They were really good. You should also make sure you carry some emergency supplies with you, including extra food, change of clothing, rain gear, boat repair kit, first aid supplies, that's for sure. I wound up cutting my finger on the first day and it was not fun. Yeah, make sure you just bring all the necessary camping gear you would need for having at least a 5 to 7 day trip. And thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.